Hey Brick Maniacs, we're here on the floor at World War Brick. I got Wes joining me because we're taking a look at some incredible MOCs. We're going to start here with the airfield and kind of work our way down. So obviously we've got a little soccer match going on here. Tell me a little bit about how this came together. Was it just kind of you wanted an airfield to display the aircraft themselves, or how did the mock it up off the ground?
Yeah, well, it started for sure with the aircraft. So actually this Albatross here was the first aircraft I ever built.
Very cool. I love the color scheme.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well. The decals were just vinyl that I cut out. Mostly I build ships, so this was kind of a departure for me. But I really had an interest in World War I, so we started building that. And then just kind of built one aircraft after another. And then we do a large Christmas display, annual Christmas display every year at our lug back in Grand Forks. And we wanted to incorporate some of the aircraft and some of the history.
Sure.
So we wanted to do something maybe a little more non-violent, a little more for kids. So this was kind of it was inspired by the Christmas truce.
Yeah, the famous soccer match, sure.
Yeah, but this was like a post-war thing. So the idea was, the armistice was just signed in 1918, and then there was a match of a different kind between, in this case, the French and the Germans, with the British and the Americans watching. And it was just kind of a fun way to get all the aircraft together.
Yeah.
Start expanding the airfield kind of bit by bit as we go. So, yeah, and this is kind of a fraction of it right now. We're still growing it. Still want to add some more planes, some more elements to it. But yeah, I like how it's turning out so far.
So as you can see, as we kind of work our way down, we've got varying scales going on here. When you start a MOC like this, what do you decide to build in certain scale sizes?
Well, for sure, I think the World War I aircraft lend themselves well to minifig scale.
Yeah.
They're not too oversized.
Outrageous.
Or anything like, right.
I feel
a little
that.
more affordable, perhaps, just to start building and tinkering with. So that's kind of why I started with that for the minifig scale. For a lot of the other aircraft you see here, so these World War II aircraft and then the Falklands War aircraft down there, scaled those down quite a bit. These are 155 scale.
Okay.
And the whole idea with that was I wanted to build a little base plate diorama for each of them. So they had to fit within a standard 32 by 32 base plate. So each one of these aircraft, even if they're not displayed, has their own little scenes.
Airfield MOC, yeah, sure.
Right, yeah. And that's kind of, I always like the airfield side of it. So you can tell with the hangar and with the World War I and with all these little base plates, I like having that extra element other than just the aircraft itself.
No, I don't want to skip over any of the aircraft either, but I got to say, and you were saying it was a collaborative build. The use of those, of the railroad to be able to create that shape is absolutely brilliant. How did you guys come up with that?
Yeah, so this is, I give all credit to one of our founding members for our lug. This is Jamie Lunsky's idea. And basically we built a huge Christmas village, as part of our public display for Grand Forks. And we bought a ton of this curved railroad track. Yeah. So we had a lot left over. And we're trying to figure out, okay, well, what else can we do with these other than railroads? So he had the idea, okay, well, we can build a hangar out of it based on just 4 of the 48 by 48 base plates. That's just kind of the way that the shape worked out.
Yeah, and it fits really clean, you know what I mean? Yeah.
It does, yeah. It turned out really well. But that's all his brainchild. We started off with doors actually up here instead of windows, and then he replaced all of them with windows so you can see into it. Yeah. It makes it a really cool effect, especially when you have stuff in it. During our Christmas display, we usually put like an airliner or something big in there that we can kind of look in and see. But right now, I'm kind of hijacking it for our unit display here, which kind of the rest of these aircraft here are all part of the 119th Fighter Squadron, which was based in Fargo, which is pretty close to us. They operated at an interceptor role for 60 years, starting with the F-51 here.
Wow.
And then they ended in 2006 with the F-16 interceptor variant. So this was kind of a way to show the heritage of that particular squadron. Yeah. Since they're our near neighbors. Now they operate UAS still in Fargo, so we still have a lot of their members that come and visit us for their Christmas displays and stuff like that. So.
That's really cool. This is an excellent little build here. So what scale are you working with in this one?
So this is actually the same scale as
these. Okay, 155th, yeah.
Yeah, so that's an F-102, which I've actually never seen one in Lego. I've seen a few F-106s. And I started out building, so the rest of these aircraft here are about 1/40th scale. And I was going to originally build this one in 1/40th, but it actually would have been almost a foot longer than the F4. It's
Wow.
a huge plane.
Yeah, okay.
So I thought, okay, well, let's scale it down a little bit to kind of match the size of the other ones for now. And the F-102, had a pretty long history in North Dakota as an interceptor. So it was just cool to try and build one. Maybe someday we'll build one in the full
bigger
scale.
size, yeah,
but, but I like the way that one turned out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the angling is I mean, obviously it's super sharp because it's got that lawn dart look to it, and then you can see the way you kind of like got these to integrate here. Was that tough to capture? I mean, did you kind of get the wings set down and then you're like, all right, I got to figure out how to get the fuselage on this thing?
For sure, wings was the trickiest part, and I did start with that.
Yeah.
And then even integrating underneath, there's an openable missile bay. So I had to integrate. Okay, it has AIM-4 Falcon missiles in there, so wanted to incorporate those opening and closing. So there's not a lot of space to work with. But yeah, once I had the wings down, the rest kind of fell in place around it. And then it does have undercarriage as well, but it's not displayed because we have it in a takeoff mode here. But
I like that little drop tank build too. That's just a real clean build. All right, so moving down, we have some Falklands War stuff here as well. You were saying?
Yeah. So this obviously is the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War, which I actually started building these about this time last year. So it's kind of building up towards this a little bit. And yeah, I actually grew up in the UK a little bit.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, along with the Spitfire anyway. I think the second most legendary aircraft over there was the Harrier at the time. This was in the 90s. So I always had this fascination of vertical takeoff and the Harrier in particular. And I really wanted to build a Sea Harrier. Again, that was an aircraft I hadn't really seen much in Lego before.
Right.
So I started with the Sea Harrier FRS-1 here, in the same scale as the World War II Warbirds. And again, I wanted to have a base plate for it, so I built the carrier deck there.
Yeah, I like that.
And some of the figures as well to match the scale.
That's a cool little figure build too to hit that scale.
Yeah, I think these, minifigs obviously too big.
Right.
Microfig is way too small, so I had to find something in between. And give them little.
And you use the bricks.
Arms.
I love that.
Yeah. Just the little brick built figures worked out the best, I think, for that scale.
Well, and the decals that you got going on here too really just brighten up that build. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone who builds a Harrier, the first thing I'm going to ask, what'd you do with the wings? How did you get that slope?
Yeah, so that dihedral is always a challenge, I think. So in here, it's just basic regular hinges. So that gives it a little bit of a flex, to be able to slope down as much as the real aircraft does. And then, in this scale in particular, that's a bit of a challenge, to try and integrate that and the landing gear that retracts and, all the other details. So it's kind of a fun process. I hadn't really built any modern jets at that point. I hadn't really gotten into any of this stuff yet.
Sure.
So it was fun to kind of go from World War II to Falklands War, a little bit more modern jets. And then, after the FRS-1, that was easy to transition into the Harrier GR3 here. Also with the base, just wanted to make that a little a hide for it, basically, how they operate in West Germany.
The little truck adds a lot too, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then the A4, I wanted to build some Argentine aircraft. So the A4 and then the Picara was actually the one, I actually scrambled to finish this right before this because I wanted to incorporate another Argentine aircraft.
Yeah.
And the Picara in general is really interesting just because it was the only native Argentine aircraft to fight in the Falklands.
Interesting, okay.
The rest, the A4 was the US aircraft, the Mirage 3 was a French aircraft. So it took part in the war and had some very credible offensive work. In this case, obviously, this one was sabotaged by the SAS Raiders.
Yeah,
so
right.
I had to incorporate a couple of those
I
in
like
there
that.
as well. So.
That's very cool. So when you're building in this scale, how hard do you work to keep stuff like functioning landing gear, various loadouts, whatever, even like your missile bay over here, and how much are you just like, well, I want it to be more in scale? Do you have to compromise there at all?
There are compromises. Like most of the landing gear is just removable instead of retractable.
Sure.
But that's kind of a good compromise for that scale.
Yeah.
Anytime I'm building, no matter the scale, I'm trying to build for realism as much as possible. So not as much ruggedness, I guess. The P-51 is a good example there. That landing gear does retract, but it's very fragile looking, I guess, which the actual aircraft, it does have some fairly narrow landing gear to deal with. So I do build a lot for looks, and mostly I would say for looks. And then it ends up you know, the more details you can incorporate in there, you're always like, I could add a little more detail here, but then it's like, okay, well that looks like it's too big or something, so you compromise for like the missiles, for example. Instead of having a cone, just putting a single round plate on there or something.
Just to add enough detail to where you're visually recognized.
Exactly. And then I think, you know, anytime you're building in any scale, once you add the decals to it or the stickers to it, then it really pulls it together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it really looks the part. So
very cool. Well, and then we'll wrap things up here with a very, very iconic and recognizable Brickmania kit.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're going for a Black Hawk Down vibe here because we've got our bad eggs rolling in. Yep.
Yeah, so we had the Brickmania, I think you guys have a new version now, but this was the original version.
Super 6.8,
yeah. The MH60. And Super 6.8 actually did not go down to Black Hawk Down, so it's a little bit inaccurate in that case. But I wanted to incorporate basically this scene where the aircraft is down. We have Little Bird still buzzing around. We have Little Bird gunships, so that the MH6 and then the AH6 in front, they were providing a big support role in the conflict. I'm a helicopter pilot myself, so
very cool.
Black Hawk Down really got my attention. You know, when the book came out, and then when the movie came out, really inspired me. Just the level of piloting skill of the 160th.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that really caught my attention. And just wanted to do a small build here just to incorporate mostly the Little Birds, because those were ones that I had designed fairly recently.
Yeah, those are cool little builds, absolutely.
And then incorporating the soldiers on the side and then the pilots and everything as best I could. So
fun too when you get one of those, like a solid design for the main version, then you can kind of like work to have different variants of it, you know, the gunship and then the crew. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, so this, you know, 5-bladed main rotor, 2-bladed tail rotor versus the newer version with the 6-bladed main rotor and the twin tail rotor. Yeah, it was fun to kind of tinker with those and come up with a couple different versions that fit the bill. So,
sweet.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, obviously a very, very phenomenal spread and an excellent addition to World War Brick. Wes, is there anything else you'd like to cover here before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I've been here before as a spectator. This is our first time really bringing anything out to it, but
cool.
it's been really cool. It's been a good experience so far.
Fantastic.
So appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely having a good time, and obviously getting a chance to get around and do this and be able to chat with guys like you is exactly why we do it. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you guys for watching.